Hello everyone, welcome to Putnam County Library Lunch and Learn. My name is Spencer Traut. I am the Adult and Teen Services Librarian here at Putnam County Library. Thank you all for coming. Today I've just given pretty much a spiel on what I do, how I do it, what I did before I did this, and why I love what I do way more than what I've ever done before. I'm just going to kind of go into the broad sense of everything I do every day on average. So I'll start with my background. I am not originally from Cookeville, but I love it here now. I've lived here about 2 years. I moved out here for my wife. She's born and raised here, and we figured we'd settle down out here because I am from Colorado. It's expensive there and a lot of people there, and I miss Colorado a lot, but I'm loving Cookeville because for me this is a small town and it's not small by any means, so it's kind of a nice break. I originally my first experience with a library is Colorado Springs School District 11. I worked at 2 different elementary schools every week. I would do a couple days at one school, a couple days at a different school. They were Wilson and Rogers Elementary. So I was called a DST, a District Support Technician. And essentially what that means is I was the assistant librarian, but I was also the, come on in. I was also the tech support too. So I kind of played 2 roles. I was kind of the go-to whenever someone's computer would break, and I'm not very tech savvy, so that kind of took a while for me to get acclimated to that, but it was fun to learn that. But what really called me toward this was the impact I could have on the kids at the school. Buying them books and getting them interested in reading. There's kids that I met that weren't interested in reading at all, and you just had to find the right book for them. And often that was a graphic novel, because these days everyone loves their graphic novels and their manga. And for me, that's better than nothing, you know what I mean? It's better than TV. At least they're reading, And there's so much creativity that goes into graphic novels and manga that you really have to give it credit. And if that's the bridge that takes kids to go from reading, something more like a comic book to something more like F. Scott Fitzgerald, then so be it, whatever it takes to get people interested in books. And so performing that job, it really, made it clear to me how much of an effect librarians can have, how flexible the job can be. Because at one point I was tech support, and so was the librarian at the school. She was tech support too. She was known as an LTE, Library Technical Educator. So she was tech support even more so than I was. She'd hand out computers at the beginning of every year. It really just kind of made me realize how much the job and the profession has changed over the years. Back in the 50s or 60s, you just got books for people, bought books and showed them where the books were and this and that. And now we have digital materials, we have outreach programs. The library performs so many different functions in its community, whatever community that is, here at Cookeville, Putnam County, that its impact can take many different forms. And that really interests me because you can really take it upon yourself to choose what your library does for the people living in the community. But anyway, after I moved away from Colorado Springs, moved to Cookeville, I started, briefly before, I started my tenure at Valdosta State University. I'm going to graduate in December with my master's in library and information science. And started here in the summer of 2023 as a part-time desk clerk. Did that for about a year before I was given this job as the Adult and Teen Services Librarian, and I've been loving it. It's every day is an adventure, and I don't know, I love it. I'll talk more about it here though. So any given day, my functions pretty much as follows. I put together book orders after I look at several different sources. I'll go into my sources later, but try and cast as wide of a net as possible so I can, serve as many different types of readers as possible. I create and run teen, adult, senior, and all ages programs, as we're doing right now. I assist patrons with various needs, especially the needs that desk clerks can't help with. So I'm kind of like the catch-all. And if I can't figure it out, then I give it to Catherine, who's the director of the library, Dr. Weisinger. But I try and figure it out if I can. But, there's always something I can't figure out. I enforce policy when necessary, mostly just reminding people the rules. Everyone here is so great that it's hardly ever a problem. If someone's breaking the rules, it's mostly that because they don't know what the rule is, and you just have to talk to them, and everyone here gets along pretty well. I kind of love it. And then I also manage library employees. Catherine's the one who schedules them, but I manage if they need to switch. I cover their shifts. I give them sort of direction when they're on the clock. Handle complaints, damaged items, fines, that kind of odd technical stuff that sometimes doesn't get the attention it deserves. I try and handle that when I can. And on the back burner, I will weed older, worn, and unused materials. I'll get into that more later, but weeding, as long as we have the shelf space, I like to keep books around. We want more books, not less, but it's inevitable that every book has its day, and eventually we'll have to weed it. So I'll start with ordering books. So I order books from Ingram. Ingram iPage is the program that we use. It's kind of gives you a lowdown on what it looks like here. I just found these screenshots on the internet, so that's not anything I've ever looked at actually, but this is pretty much the average web page that you'll pop up on if you look at Ingram iPage. It's ideal for library purchasing because it will give you just an abundant amount of information. It'll tell you reviews, compiled reviews from different sources. I'll go to those sources later, but it'll tell you the year it was published, what if it's in a series, what language it's in. You can kind of see it there, the author, and the price, obviously. And because it's made for libraries and it's made for giant bulk orders, they give us really good deals on our books. So that's why we use Ingram. It will also ship books before the street date, which is super helpful. So I'll order books like a month, sometimes 2 months out before they're even going to get published, and then they get shipped here within a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And they'll live downstairs, they'll be processed, and they'll be ready to go, but we won't put it on the shelf until the day it's published, and that allows patrons to have as much access and as long of a availability with this book as possible. So that's been super interesting, super useful. So when I decide what to buy, I try and take into account as many different sources, reputable sources as possible. Every source has a sort of different purpose for what I'm looking for. Before I do that, I usually begin with book requests before I look at other sources as to what to buy, because I think the best way to figure out what people in the library want is to look at what books they're requesting, And a lot of the requests, I won't lie, are for books that are too old, too unpopular, they're an independently published book that we usually can't buy, or were simply something that we already have, and I won't buy it. But there's a lot of requests that patrons put in that I wouldn't have even thought to buy the book, wouldn't have even found it on one of these reputable sources if they hadn't suggested it. So I always try and start with that and figure out what I'm going to buy out of that before I go on to what the internet and what these different sources suggest. After that, move on to Steam journals, magazines, websites, and book reviews for recommendations. Kirkus Reviews, the School Library Journal for young adults, New York Times bestsellers for popularity, the Horn Book, also for young adults, Goodreads for inputs from non-critics. It's kind of like an IMDb user score when you look at those. But that's super helpful too. I don't like to go just off of what critics say for books, because a lot of them are very disconnected with what the public actually likes. There's so many books that critics probably hated. I mean, I can think of tons of movies right off the top of my head that everyone loved, and they got super popular, and everyone changed their mind. All these critics changed their mind after the fact when they realized, oh yeah, it's actually kind of good. I was just being a little hoity-toity. So I like to take into account different perspectives, not just the critical perspective, but not just the general public perspective either. And often Ingram itself will provide recommendations too. Like I said, it'll provide reviews in each book. It'll try and compile like the most prestigious and prominent reviews. Kirkus especially is really good. They have their own award that they award every year. So that's always that's usually where I start, is Kirkus. But I also look at various other niche recommendation websites. Just for example, and this is only every once in a while that I look at these, but the Left Book Club for more liberal books and the Conservative Book Club for more conservative books. just to keep the collection balanced when I'm buying political books, because we don't want to lean too far one way or the other. We're a library. We provide the voice, we try and allow everyone to see each side of the fence without leaning too far on the other, and obviously books in the center too. But I look for books with awards when I can too, because those, they're critically acclaimed. Pulitzer Prize, National Book Award, the Young Adult Library Services Award for young adults, and even awards like the Hugo and the Christie. Those, Hugo is for science fiction books, Christie's for religious books. There's also the Poe Award, I believe, maybe it's the Edgar Award, something to do with Edgar Allan Poe, for horror books. There's lesser known awards, but they are really good for determining what book in a genre it really stood out that year. But I take into account each source's recommended age for these books as well, and when they don't provide an age, I seek it out, just to figure out where we should place these books. As far as programming goes, it's the other end of the fence. This is something I needed a little bit more work on when I started, because I was used to helping my librarian buy books for the kids or at least process the books that we got at the elementary schools I worked at. As far as programming goes, the teachers did that. They just brought the kids into the library for, the only thing we would do related to programming is really like technology, STEM sort of little programs, not programs, but games we would play with these kids, coding games, stuff like that. So as far as learning how to do that, it's been a work in progress, but I've actually enjoyed that more than buying the books. I thought that would be something I kind of dreaded every day, but now I really look forward to running programs and creating new programs and figuring out what people like to do. Buying books now seems, I'd still love it, but it's a little boring compared to doing this stuff, like up there we have the, I can't remember what it was called, the Van Gogh, no, it was the Jackson Pollock. It was like a 4-foot by like 10-foot Jackson Pollock painting that we hung in place of the library sign all for about a month or a month and a half during the summer. And we had 40 or 50 kids and a couple parents splatter some paint on the painting and make it look like a Jackson Pollock painting. And I'm not saying he's not artistic, but I think everyone did a great job no matter what they did to splatter that paint. To the left of that, we have Plant Bingo. That goes on once a month. It's the third Saturday every month. And so it's not this coming Saturday, but it'll be the Saturday after. So not tomorrow, but the following Saturday at noon. That is an event where we bring plants. Anyone who has a plant they don't want to bring, they can bring it, put it in the middle, and by the time everyone starts playing, we have around 30, 40 plants that are great, but people are just kind of tired of and they don't want to take care of it anymore. So someone else can take it, if they win bingo, that is. But you can always come if you don't have a plant. You can just come and enjoy it. A lot of people bring multiple plants that they don't want, and I'm not a plant guy, but I have like gardening books that people have donated to the library. So I always try and put something in there, maybe a pot or something like that, a mug even. So you'll always find something at bingo. Everyone walks away with something. There's usually so much that people walk away with multiple things. Down there below the Jackson Pollock painting is a teen self-portrait class that we did. It was a Picasso sort of thing, so everyone was making portraits in the shape of Picasso. There's a lot of art-related programs up here, but that's just because Color Our World was our most recent summer reading program theme. So it was very art-themed summer, all these programs. And then here we have a skeleton. He's not really part of a program, but he's fun. You can find him standing outside the library now, along with a bunch of other Halloween decorations. Anyway, those are a couple examples. We also have Dungeons and Dragons. That's every other week for all ages. Same with adults and teens. There's 3 different Dungeons and Dragons programs we got going on. And Senior Bingo, that one's popular twice a month. Everyone loves that. First Tuesday Book Club, that's once a month on the first Tuesday of the month at 3 p.m., I believe. And Spanish class, that's every Friday at 9. These are all programs I inherited. So I might help run these programs, except Spanish class, that's Nicole all the way. I know a little Spanish in Poco, but the other ones I help run when I can. D&D, Liz runs that, but Senior Bingo and First Tuesday Book Club, these are programs I inherited and they're so popular I can't do away with them. I'd be foolish to do away with them. but I take into account times that the events will be popular. So there's been a couple programs I've inherited that I've changed the time on, and that's one thing I adjust if I don't adjust the program itself. When I create new programs though for different age demographics, take into account which season it is. There's a lot of outdoor events in the summer, and then in the winter there's not a lot of outdoor events because no one wants to be outside. Summer reading program is a big deal, so that's where a lot of our efforts go toward, because we want everyone's more out and about in the summer. Kids have the summer off. A lot of parents, if their teachers have the summer off too. So we like everyone to come to the library at that point, and so we throw a bunch of programs at the wall and see what everyone enjoys. And for Halloween, obviously, we go all out, as you can see. You try and use the resources we already have, if I can. Sometimes that's tough, but we have a ton of like arts and crafts related stuff. So that's been part of the reason that I've kept this VIP program going on for our developmentally disabled adults, to use as many arts and crafts programs as we can, because we have so much of it. I try and target everyone too. We have a free Thanksgiving feast for the less fortunate coming up on November 25th at 3 p.m. Pokemon trading card day, for example, for everyone who's a fan of Pokemon. It's not everyone, but hey, we gotta appeal to the senior bingo people and the Pokemon trading card people, Assisting patrons and enforcing policy. It's probably my favorite part of the job. Not enforcing policy, but helping people. Just the service aspect of the library, because it can take any shape, Sometimes it's as simple as checking someone out, which, usually the desk clerks are doing, but I will fill in when I have to, or when I can. Sometimes I like just taking a break from sitting at my desk and putting together orders and thinking of programs all day, and I go and talk to the people that we're actually serving. That's the best way to keep your ear to the ground, is by talking to people and keeping communication open. Questions that desk clerks can't answer, though, often fall to me. I will deal with fines when people, if a book is lost, someone has to pay for it. Future library plans. There's programming suggestions too. A lot of the programs I've created, people have been like, we should do this. And I'm like, yeah, we should, I'm like, you're gonna come to this, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do it. Because, if someone's gonna come to it, that's all I care about. I wanna serve the community. So a lot of these programs, I'm like, I would never come to this in a million years, but here I am running plant bingo, I'm not a plant guy at all at the beginning of this, and here I am, now I know what a ficus is, at least a little. Booking meeting rooms for patrons, that's another aspect of my job. But I'll warn you, Halloween's the last day to do this. Starting November 1st, because of construction on the parking lot, it's going to be changing the parking lot up a little bit. November 1st, we will stop allowing the public to use our meeting rooms for an indeterminate amount of time. I'm going to try and reach out to people who were interested in the meeting room once we open it back up again, though, just so that they're aware that they can use it again. But I'm not sure when that'll be. Reminding patrons of the rules, like I said before, it's usually, like I said, a reminder. It's something that they didn't know, or they just needed a reminder. They needed to know that they're breaking a rule. They're not doing it on purpose. There's every once in a while that happens, and we have to get more involved than we'd like to, and we have to be the bad guy. But by and large, in the year I've spent working here, a year and 2 months, in this position at least, I haven't really run into that. Everyone here is very friendly, and everyone's pretty respectful of the space of the library. Everyone realizes you can come here and just exist. You don't have to do anything more than that. It's just a place for people to be and to connect with the community, even if they're not ever going to pick up a book once. I'm glad people come here and just are here, so we can say hi and we can talk to them, Like, if nothing else, that's what the library is. It's a hub. Weeding books, maybe my least favorite part of the job, just because we don't like to weed books. We want more books, not less. But all books have their day, and most titles do too. If a title loses, the difference between a book and a title, or copy, I should say, is you can have a copy of one title. You got 5 copies of one title. We're gonna weed the copy before we think about completely weeding the title from our whole system. We might have a copy of one book, and so might All Good. But if our copy is looking like this book up here, and All Goods is looking pristine still, and it's a popular enough book, we're going to weed this copy. We're not going to weed the entire title from the system yet, because there's no need to. It's a popular book still. So not saying every title has its day. There's some titles that are immortal, that are classics, like A Tale of Two Cities, for example, or something. If that book, that copy of Tale of Two Cities is too worn to be read by people, you bet your bottom I'm gonna buy a replacement for it because it's Charles Dickens, and everyone, it's gonna always be popular to some extent. If not popular, it's gonna be prestigious. At least for like my lifetime, I could see. The Bible's another great example. That's never gonna wane in popularity, these religious texts. Everyone will find use for the Torah, for the Quran, anything like that. But even the best titles often call for replacement. And all books eventually fall apart. Even books that sit there and do nothing aren't used at all. They'll get moldy and yellow. So books that are not so popular or classic enough will get discarded eventually. I usually look and see if a book has been checked out in the past, depending on the section, 5, 10 years. If it's not seen any action in like that amount of time, then it might be worth thinking whether or not we're gonna read it or not, because it's just taking up space. But I'm also a proponent of the belief that if we have the space, we should use it. I'm not trying to stuff our shelves so full that we can't even pull a book off of it. But if we have the space and there is room for a book, then usually, if it's not too decrepit, we'll try and keep it, because who knows? Just because it hasn't gotten checked out in 5 years doesn't mean that we're not going to have some resurgence in popularity 2 weeks from now, and then we'll have 6 people come in wanting it. You never know. And I want more material, not less. We're a library. We want to provide as much info as possible, so getting rid of it hurts. So what I've learned in this sort of role, it's that this job it can really look like whatever you want it to look like. I spend some days, helping people paint, and some days just behind my desk ordering books. Some days I'm outside smashing a car up with a sledgehammer. That's the Trash a Truck event. It was fun, but it's crazy. But it's a really flexible job. You can kind of make it look like however you want to. And I've learned that if you just are trying to serve the people around you, that's really all you need. I've taken my lead from the other admin here, Catherine, Carol, and Brian, and they've been here for a long time and had these sort of jobs a long time, a lot of experience in this sort of field, that it's been easy to sort of just, kind of learn from them. They're all a bunch of pros, and without them, I wouldn't be doing this as well as I am today. I've still got a lot to learn, but I feel like having a director and an IT guy like Brian, a children's librarian like Carol, it really helps. And I feel like, ultimately, if I could say the best thing I've learned from this position is that connecting people with information feels like a surefire way to provide the resources for improving one's life and one's community. Yeah. Any questions? Well, thank you all of you. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for coming. And yeah.